Bureaucracy made us husband and wife. Now we can undo it. Act 1: The clerical catastrophe. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that paperwork is a cruel joke. A cosmic prank played on us poor, unsuspecting mortals. I'm Emma Carter, a freelance illustrator whose superpower is drawing disasters. Seriously, if you need an artist who specializes in chaotic, disastrous scenarios, I'm your girl. Most of my artwork is born from the catastrophes that seem to follow me like an unwelcome shadow. So, you'd think by now I'd be prepared for the next train wreck of my life. But no, life's always got a few tricks up its sleeve. Which brings me to my new apartment. Ah yes, a fresh start, an oasis where my freelance chaos could blend seamlessly with an endless stack of takeaway pizza boxes and mismatched furniture. It was supposed to be my peaceful haven, where I could work in solitude, binge-watch reality TV, and, most importantly, not have to deal with anything that even remotely resembled responsibility. But of course, life decided to throw a curveball, and of course it involved paperwork. Enter Liam Sinclair, my unassuming, corporate lawyer neighbor. We both moved into the building on the same day, an odd coincidence that should have been a sign of things to come. Liam's the type of guy who finds joy in spreadsheets. He's got that crisp, buttoned-up look, always in a perfectly pressed suit that probably costs more than my entire wardrobe combined. We exchanged the usual awkward hellos as we schlepped our boxes up the stairs, but that was the extent of it. I didn't think much of him at the time, just another neighbor, right? Well, the rental office had other plans. I don't know how to describe the feeling, but you know that moment when something's off, and you can't figure out exactly what it is, but you're certain your life is about to get a whole lot more complicated? That's exactly how I felt when I stepped into the rental office 2 weeks after I moved in. The clerk was this middle-aged woman, whose face was a mixture of frazzled and slightly amused. It was like she knew something I didn't, but she wasn't about to spill the beans yet. "Hi, I'm Emma Carter. I'm here to talk about an issue with my account," I said, flashing a polite, but also panicked, smile. She looked up from her computer, as if seeing me for the first time. Her fingers paused mid-keyboard and a strange little smile tugged at the corner of her lips. I didn't know whether to be worried or just incredibly confused. "Oh yes, Miss Carter," she said slowly, scanning the screen. "There seems to be an issue. Let me just check something real quick." She clicked away at the keyboard, the clacking sound echoing through the quiet office. I waited, and then she printed out a form and slid it across the desk with a too knowing smile. I glanced down at the document, expecting the usual rental agreement nonsense, but what I saw made my heart stop. Delayed tax refund notice. I stared at the paper like I'd just been hit by a freight train. "Delayed?" I repeated, voice cracking slightly. "The IRS never delays anything for good reasons, right?" The clerk didn't seem as concerned. "That's correct, but I'm afraid it's because of your marital status." I blinked. "Marital status? She said, clicking something on the screen. "According to our records, you and Mr. Sinclair are registered as a married couple." I nearly dropped the form. I stared at her, then back at the form, trying to piece together what had just happened. Married? Liam? No way. We had barely exchanged more than a handful of words. There was no possible way, right? I mean, I had enough trouble getting through basic interactions, let alone accidentally marrying someone in the process. "Married?" I fumbled for a response. "Wait, hold on, this has to be a mistake. I'll let you sort it out with Mr. Sinclair," she said in that weirdly calm way that made me feel like I was already in over my head. I was still reeling when I got home. I could barely focus enough to get through a single drawing without my mind wandering back to that absurd piece of information, married. So, I did the only reasonable thing. I ran straight to Liam's door. I knocked. The door opened to reveal him in a button-up shirt, pressed, of course, holding a mug of what I could only assume was perfectly brewed coffee. His eyes met mine with that slightly confused expression that usually accompanied my "I swear this is important" face. "We need to talk," I blurted. He raised an eyebrow. "Okay, what's up?" I practically shoved the letter at him, my hand trembling. "Apparently, we're married." He blinked, glanced at the letter, then back at me. "Wait, what?" "Yes. Married." I took a step back, letting that sink in. "You and me?" According to the rental office and the IRS. Liam's face went pale. It wasn't a good look on him. He looked like he'd just been told he'd accidentally signed up for a second mortgage. "I swear I didn't sign anything," he said, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. "This is some kind of mistake. We're not married." Apparently we are," I interrupted. "At least on paper." His hand dropped to his side. "So what does this mean? Can we just fix it? Let's go to the office and ask." I said, already feeling the heat of impending disaster. So, we went together, both of us feeling like we were about to get caught in some cosmic bureaucratic trap. The rental office was even less helpful than I'd expected. The clerk, who greeted us, as though we were both part of a bizarre reality show, tapped at her keyboard, eyes narrowing suspiciously at the screen. "Ah, it looks like you're divorced," she said, almost too cheerfully, but also still married. She gave us a confused smile and started typing furiously. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" "No kidding." I looked at Liam, who was now visibly sweating. This was turning into something that no one could have predicted in their worst nightmares. I could already see it, the endless red tape, the endless waiting, the endless nonsense. "We'll fix it, right?" I asked Liam, my voice shaky, but trying to hold it together. "This is just a mix-up." "Right." He met my gaze, his expression pained. "I hope so. But I don't think it's going to be that simple." At that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I was about to get trapped in the worst bureaucratic nightmare of my life, and I was bringing Liam Sinclair along for the ride. Whether he liked it or not. Act 2, The Great Fake Marriage Plan. If I had to pick a moment when my life officially went from slightly chaotic to out-of-control sitcom, it was when I came up with the idea that would change everything. Pretend to be married, until the paperwork mess got sorted out. Sounds simple, right? A couple of fake kisses, some awkward conversations, and then the bureaucratic disaster would just magically disappear. In hindsight, I should have known better. Life doesn't work that way, especially not my life. We had a plan, at least, it seemed like a plan at the time. Liam and I sat down in my apartment, staring at each other like we were about to sign up for some weird reality show where we had to pretend to be a couple in front of the world. We set the ground rules. 1. No romantic involvement. 2. No interference in each other's personal lives. 3. Absolutely no cuddling on the couch. That was non-negotiable. I had boundaries, people? We nodded solemnly at each other, as if this was the most logical, reasonable course of action. The fake marriage solution was born. It would be fine. I was sure of it. What could possibly go wrong? Spoiler alert. Everything? The first hiccup came when my family found out. How, you ask? Oh, you know, just a harmless little group text that spiraled out of control. My mom, always excited by any news that even remotely resembled a wedding, texted me, "Wait, did you elope?" I stared at my phone, blinking a few times as if the words would magically rearrange themselves into something sensible. "Eloped? No. I trailed off, realizing how ridiculous this sounded. How does one explain to their mother that they are pretending to be married to their uptight lawyer neighbor because of a clerical error? Spoiler, you can't. "Well, I'm planning a reception." My mom cheered, all enthusiastic on the other end of the line. "You're gonna need a reception, right? I've already called the caterer." I wanted to scream, but instead, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if maybe I could just climb into a hole and disappear forever. Liam, who had been standing nearby, leaned over and whispered, "Reception." "Are you serious?" I don't know what's worse. The fact that my mom is planning a wedding reception for two people who aren't actually married, or the fact that we have to pretend we're in love in front of an entire extended family, I muttered. "Yeah, that's gonna be a fun weekend," Liam deadpanned, looking less than thrilled. So, now we were stuck pretending to be married in front of my entire family, which, as you can imagine, was a highlight in the making. Not only did I have to keep up the charade, but my mom had this uncanny ability to make everything seem even more awkward. The first family gathering we attended as newlyweds was a minefield of questions about our honeymoon. How we met. We kept the details vague. Something about a coffee shop, I think, and the most mortifying question of all, when are you going to have kids? I almost choked on my water at that one. Liam, looking like he might die of second-hand embarrassment, shot me a look that said, "If we survive this, we deserve an award." But the worst part was the sheer number of people who genuinely thought we'd eloped, and then had to do the thing with a reception. The entire evening felt like a circus of my mom's well-meaning, but misguided enthusiasm. But wait, it got better. Liam's boss, who had clearly spent too much time reading business books about how to climb the corporate ladder, decided to take a sudden interest in him. Why? Because of me. His supportive wife, of course. Now, I've heard of people getting promotions for a lot of reasons, but this was next level. His boss started dropping into the office, at random times, asking Liam about his home life, and how he was managing his family responsibilities, as if I was some kind of corporate asset. It got to the point where Liam started getting extra attention, all because of me. This marriage had turned into a promotion booster. "You're getting a promotion because of this?" I asked him, one evening as we stood in the kitchen, pouring wine in a futile attempt to calm our nerves. "Oh yeah, absolutely," Liam said, rolling his eyes. "Apparently, having a stable home life is exactly what my boss wants to see in a partner for the next big case." I let out a half sigh. "So I'm helping you get a promotion now? This is ridiculous." "I don't know whether to thank you or be resentful," Liam said with a wry grin. But just when I thought I couldn't possibly get any deeper into the farce of it all, the universe, being its usual cruel and unpredictable self, decided to send in an actual curveball. Our landlord, who, for reasons I'll never fully understand, thought it would be a great idea to schedule a random home inspection on the exact weekend when we had been forced to pretend we were an affectionate, loving couple for my family. I opened the door to her cheerful face, trying not to look like a deer in headlights. She didn't even give us a chance to catch our breath before she asked, "So, how's married life treating you too?" We both smiled awkwardly, and then, because the universe wasn't finished with us yet, she dropped the bombshell. "Oh, we need to take a joint photo for our records. You two look so adorable together. Maybe you could cuddle on the couch?" I felt my soul leave my body. Liam looked at me, eyes wide, as though I might have just suggested that we dive headfirst into a pool of sharks. I really didn't want to do this. I didn't want to pretend for the landlord too. But of course, we had to. So there we were, pretending to be a couple who cuddled on the couch like the world's most awkward sitcom duo, smiling like we were in a romantic comedy, instead of a full-blown disaster. And just when I thought I'd hit my limit, the universe pulled out one last cruel twist. The neighbor's dog went missing. I'm not talking about an occasional barking mutt. I'm talking about Muffin, a ridiculously cute, but ridiculously hyperactive pug who had apparently decided that my life needed even more chaos. Suddenly, people started whispering, because that's what happens when you accidentally adopt a dog. And now, we weren't just pretending to be married. We were co-parents to a dog that chewed through everything, including furniture, socks, and my last nerve. Muffin, the adorable disaster, had no concept of boundaries. No matter how many chew toys we bought him, he preferred the taste of everything else in our apartment, especially our shoes. He was like the physical manifestation of my anxiety in dog form. And so, there we were, pretending to be a married couple with a ridiculous pug named Muffin. My family convinced we were the perfect newlyweds, Liam getting a corporate boost, and the universe chuckling at the absurdity of it all. But hey, at least we hadn't killed each other yet, right? Act 3, when pretend becomes real. The line between pretending and actually being a couple began to blur somewhere between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m. The early days of this fake marriage had been filled with a bizarre mix of forced smiles and awkwardly shared spaces, but now things were starting to get weird. For starters, Liam, my uptight, spreadsheet-loving, no-nonsense lawyer neighbor, was a secret stress baker. I kid you not. It started out innocently enough. One night, I woke up to the sound of clattering pots and pans. I figured I'd dreamt it, because clearly, Liam wasn't the type to bake, right? Wrong. There he was in the kitchen, at 3 a.m., furiously rolling dough and sprinkling flour like his very life depended on it. And these weren't just any pastries. No, these were the kind of pastries you'd find in a fancy cafe, the ones that made your mouth water with just a glance. I thought we agreed we weren't doing the whole baking late at night thing. I grumbled sleepily, leaning against the doorframe. "Is this an intervention?" Liam shot me a grin, flicking some flour at me. "Can't sleep. Need an outlet. It's either this or spreadsheets. Guess which one I prefer?" I rolled my eyes but couldn't help the amused smile that tugged at the corner of my lips. "You know, it's 3 a.m., right?" "I know," he said with a contented sigh, pulling a perfectly browned croissant from the oven. "But when you've baked this," he held it up like a proud parent showing off their child's first drawing, "you forget what time it is." It was insane. He was insane. And yet, in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just pretending anymore. I wasn't just playing a role. Something was shifting. Something I hadn't even expected. And then, there was me. I started sleep talking. But not in the way normal people do. I mean, who sleep talks in Shakespearean insults? Apparently I do. One night, I was in the middle of an epic argument in my sleep, yelling at a non-existent foe with such passion. I could have been auditioning for the lead role in a tragic play. "Thou art a pox upon the land!" I shouted, flinging my arm dramatically. Liam, being the ever-helpful neighbor he was, chuckled softly and muttered, "You really should write that down. Could be a good plot twist." I groggily sat up in bed, trying to piece together what had just happened. "What? Did I just insult you in my sleep?" He didn't even flinch. "Nah. You insulted someone. Not me, though. I'm used to it. It was bizarre, and I couldn't help but laugh, because in a weird way, it felt normal. In a twisted, chaotic disaster of a life I'd somehow found myself living. It was the first thing that didn't feel like a lie. And it didn't stop there. It was like I had opened a door I didn't even know existed. Because suddenly, Liam and I were getting each other in ways I hadn't expected. Take that night we were sitting on the couch, binge-watching the cringiest reality TV show imaginable. You know, the ones where people make horrible relationship choices, and you end up shouting at the screen like you're a contestant on the show. I didn't expect it, but there we were, sitting side by side, yelling at the latest drama unfolding in front of us. Why would she say that? Oh my God, what is wrong with her? I hissed at the TV. Liam grinned, shaking his head. I don't know, but I swear if I hear him say trust the process one more time, I'm going to lose it. We both erupted into laughter, and for a moment, I felt something settle in my chest. It wasn't the kind of laughter you share with a roommate or a coworker. No, it was the kind of laughter you share with someone who knows you, someone you've built a history with, someone who, despite all your quirks and oddities, gets it. It wasn't just pretending, it was real. And that's when it hit me. I had started caring. I had started caring in a way that had nothing to do with taxes, or joint bank accounts, or forced photo ops with our landlord. I started noticing things that had never mattered before. Like the way Liam smiled when he was trying to hide his excitement, or how his eyes narrowed when he was deep in thought. And, the worst part, I wasn't sure if it was still the fake marriage facade. I was starting to like the real Liam. And, apparently, the real me, too. Cue Liam's coworker, Jade. I didn't want to be the jealous type. I never wanted to be that person. But when she showed up one evening, wearing that tight little dress, and flashing her perfectly polished smile, I couldn't help it. My stomach twisted in ways I couldn't explain. Jade wasn't just flirty, she was flirting with my fake husband. I'm talking blatant, full on. I'll show you my secret stash of office gossip if you let me talk about your job for 2 hours type of flirting. And it made me want to throw something at the TV. Or maybe at Jade. And then there was Ethan, my ex, who suddenly appeared out of nowhere one afternoon when I was out with Liam. I froze when I saw him, the ghost of old feelings resurfacing with every glance. It wasn't that I still had feelings for Ethan, God, no. It was just the sheer surprise of it all. But the moment I looked at Liam, I saw something I hadn't expected. A cold, possessive glint in his eyes as he gave Ethan a look that could have frozen water. And suddenly, everything clicked. Why did I care? Why did it sting so badly when Jade flirted with Liam? Why did I feel that ridiculous flutter in my chest when I saw Liam glare at Ethan? I cared because, despite everything, I was no longer pretending. I hadn't just been acting like his wife. I had become his wife. And now I didn't know what to do with that. I found myself one night, sipping a glass of wine, staring at Liam, who was lost in thought, as he worked on some absurdly complicated spreadsheet, of course. I took a deep breath. The words, like an avalanche, came tumbling out. Why aren't we actually together? Liam froze. His pen hovered in midair. Are you drunk? No, I said, a little too loudly. Just confused. He looked at me, his face pale, his lips tight. Emma, what are you trying to say? And it was then that I realized it wasn't just the paperwork that was messed up. It wasn't the fact that we had no idea how to fix our situation. It was the fact that I had fallen in love with Liam Sinclair. For real. The paperwork came, the final papers for us to sign and officially end the charade. But when I saw those papers, I couldn't do it. I couldn't sign. Neither could Liam. What was it about this mess that felt more like home than anything I'd ever known? What was it about our chaos that made sense, in a way that nothing else had? The more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. But one thing was clear. I couldn't walk away, and neither could Liam. Act 4. The grand gesture and the real happy ending. It's funny how life can hit you with one last curveball, even when you think you've already reached the point of no return. That's exactly what happened the day I moved out. I had convinced myself that it was for the best. After all, we tried, God knows we tried, to fix everything. The divorce papers had come, our lives had been turned upside down, and pretending to be married had morphed into something so real. It was terrifying. It was time to stop the charade, stop pretending we were something we weren't. I shoved my clothes into boxes with the same speed I'd thrown them in when I first moved in. I was doing the right thing, I told myself. I needed to do this. But the empty apartment, both mine and Liam's, felt like an assault on my senses. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was deafening. And the absence of his annoying yet somehow comforting presence. It was the worst kind of loneliness. That's when I saw it. The official divorce notice from City Hall. There it was, black and white. We were officially divorced. The moment I read those words, something heavy settled in my chest. I didn't want to be divorced. I didn't want to be separate. I wanted to stay married to him. To Liam. I stood there, staring at the paper for what felt like hours. The ink on the page blurred as I blinked back, the tears threatening to fall. That's when I heard it. A frantic knock at the door. I swung it open, expecting some kind of last-minute reminder to sign some paperwork or answer some final questions about our status, but no. Instead, there was Liam, his shirt slightly askew, his hair windblown as if he'd been running. Emma! He was out of breath, a wild look in his eyes. I don't care about the paperwork. I don't care about the forms, the signatures, the divorce. I just want you. I want to be married to you. For real this time. There was a moment of stunned silence between us. My breath caught in my throat, my heart hammering in my chest as I processed what he was saying. Was this real? Had he finally figured it out? He looked at me, almost pleading with his eyes. Then, before I could respond, he stepped forward and kissed me. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some grand, movie-worthy kiss where everything magically falls into place. It was a little awkward, a little uncertain, but that only made it feel more real. It felt like we were both figuring it out in that moment, and I couldn't help but laugh against his lips, a breathless giggle of pure relief. That was nice, I whispered, pulling back just enough to look into his eyes. He grinned sheepishly. Yeah, well, I've been practicing. In case I had to convince you. I rolled my eyes, laughing again, but this time it wasn't nervous or unsure. This was the kind of laugh you share with someone you're certain about. I think you've done a pretty good job, I admitted. Before I could say another word, Liam pulled out something from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. It was our marriage certificate. I blinked, confused, before realizing what I was holding in my hands. What? I stammered. How? Wait. What's going on? He chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling with amusement. You know how the landlord always gets everything wrong? He grinned at me. Turns out, she messed up again? Our divorce? Not real. We've been married this whole time. I stared at the marriage certificate, my mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. My brain struggled to process the ridiculousness of it all. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. So, we were never divorced? Nope, Liam replied, his smile widening. Not even close. I sank onto the couch, the weight of the absurdity sinking in. So, we've been married this whole time. And I've been pretending to be divorced. Yep, Liam said, sitting beside me, a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. And you still made me propose, even though we've been legally bound this entire time. I raised an eyebrow. Dramatic speeches are your thing, babe. Don't blame me. Liam snorted, leaning back on the couch, the absurdity of it all sinking in with him as well. I really need to stop letting you make the big decisions. But I wasn't listening to him. I was too busy laughing, the kind of belly laugh that bubbles up from deep inside and doesn't stop until your cheeks hurt. The kind of laugh that could only happen when life throws its most ridiculous punches, and you just have to roll with it. The fact that we'd been married all this time? Honestly, it was the most us thing that had ever happened. It made perfect sense in a completely insane, ridiculous, yet oddly beautiful way. That's when Muffin, our overly enthusiastic, chaotic, and utterly adorable pug, bounded into the room, as if on cue, barking as though he wasn't on the joke. He hopped up on the couch and nudged his little nose into Liam's lap, demanding attention. I looked at Liam, who was now petting Muffin like he was the world's greatest dog. Well, I said, catching my breath from laughing, I guess we'll need to have that marriage conversation after all. He smirked, a mischievous glint in his eyes. We've been married this whole time, Emma. What's left to talk about? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. I guess, just everything else. And that, my dear friends, is how a clerical nightmare turned into the best thing that ever happened to us. Because in the end, it wasn't about the paperwork, or the confusion, or the mess we found ourselves in. It was about us. It was about finding love where we least expected it, and realizing that sometimes, the best things in life are the ones that are most imperfect. Muffin barked again, as if to punctuate the moment, and the screen faded to black. Story ends. I have a question for you. Have you ever had a paperwork mix-up with hilarious consequences? Let us know in the comments.